Nutmeg. Hey baby, baby, with the high heels on. Never ever known. Just a product of loveliness. Like a dog you are. I feel your fevers from your miles around.
Got enemy inbound, lock and load.
Like it was. Your dress. I feel your feet.
Taking the lead.
Reloading.
You've lost the lead, soldier. We've taken the lead. Friendly UAV overhead. Enemy position airstrike. Take it. Enemy UAV.
Oh crap, sorry.
Enemy captured.
Roger that. Nomad 2-1 on route drop-off.
Enemy Wilson deployed. Got a personal radar drone ready for
Come
action.
on.
Copy. Jaguar 3-0 about personal radar coverage. This is Jaguar. Signal fuel. Recalling to base. Enemy called for emergency air. Friendly UAV up. Enemy shield turret on the field. Enemy cruise missile incoming. Less than a minute. Almost out. Enemy UAV overhead.
station ready for test.
30 seconds. Take cover.
Damn! Baby, baby, with the high heels on. Make me feel. Really turn me on. You knock me off my feet, I'll knock me off my feet. But lonely days are good. I feel you from your miles around. Keeps me up and
Weapon top. No more.
I knew it. Oh, sorry.
Kill confirmed. Arriving on station. Kill confirmed. Kill confirmed.
Ah, crap.
Roger that. Nomad 2-1 on route to drop off.
UAV on station, ready for flyout. UAV entering the AO.
Victor!
UAV is bingo fuel. RTB for resupply.
I like it low-key.
Kill confirmed. Care package arriving at the station. Kill confirmed.
Oh, sorry!
Allied cruise missile away.
Oh no! And again. Okay.
Cluster strike is go for law.
Just... Damn it. What? What? Got hit my own cluster strike like twice. What a nod.
Kill confirmed. Kill confirmed.
Ooh.
Enemy personal range.
Seriously. Just right in time. Heck?
Enemy UAV overhead. This is our fight. Stay focused. Enemy UAV overhead. Allied crew.
That sound. Thought the footstep was on the right side and then... Oh, what the... Where am I?
Kill confirmed. Victory, mate. Let's have another.
Hello, hello, hello. That is weird. Alright, we're back. I thought my microphone wasn't working, so...
Hold up, you're on your own. Enemy UAV overhead. Yes, that is it. Enemy UAV overhead. Yes, that is it. Enemy overhead. Right, take cover. Get the score. Fight for what is yours. Personal radar overhead. Personal radar overhead. Airstrike, get down.
What?
Care package ready.
No! Damn.
Exceptional. This is who we are.
He saw me. No. I'm just gonna use the... this one. Oh, no. The other one. Oh, Cronin Traitor. Baby, baby, where did I hear a song? Just a product of loveliness. I feel your fears from your miles around. Picks me up there on a midday time. I'll be royal from 9 to 5.
Capture and defend the objectives. We're taking Alpha. Assist your team at Bravo.
Oh, too bad.
You're needed at Bravo. objectives. Keep heading. We're on Bravo.
And there was a guy about to kill.
Assis-toi.
And this one.
Radar in the air. We're taking out. Bravo, go. Hostiles, that's what.
Changing.
Got out.
Mark, send the package.
Good copy. Nomad 2-1.
Oh, come on.
Enemy precision air.
Why?
Bravo, personal radar. Care package arrived. Enemy holds 2 objectives. Take them back. We're taking Alpha. Lift your team at Charlie.
Roger that. Nomad 2-1 on route to drop off.
Alpha. Hostiles. Securing Bravo.
Oh!
Losing Alpha.
Did I get it? No!
Enemy careful.
How were they able to?
Taking Bravo.
Why my eye? No, 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 no.
Strike incoming.
No, again. Ah, crap.
Holding out.
Losing A.
Enemy personal radar is down. Enemy holds all objectives. We're taking stand by.
Damn it. Oh, fudge.
Precision airstrike. Take
Why am I so bad? Oh, no!
We have the advantage.
I knew it.
Stand by. We've lost B. Enemy UAV. Enemy care package inbound.
Why?
Holding shot. Taking Bravo.
No! Oh, the heck.
Taking Alpha.
We can do it. Ooh.
Down but not out. That's Crystal team across. We're taking Alpha.
So many.
Enemy UAV. Bravo, stand by. Enemy cluster strike incoming. Stand by.
Laser. Nah. But there's still 205. Oh yeah, I still need 3. Still need 3. What are these? Nope. Records? Nope. Achievements? Nope. So what is it then? Okay, calling cards. Where is it? Ah, this one. Heartbreaker. Okay. Baby, baby, with a high heels on. With me around if unknown. Just a loveliness. The way you make me feel. Ain't no sunshine when it's gone.
Have control. Crush them.
It's not warm and every day. No, it's not going
Enemy
there.
UAV overhead.
Oh. No?
Enemy UAV overhead.
It's not warm. Alright, so let's stay there.
Enemy cruise missile.
Why me? Tell me why? Why?
Enemy cruise missile.
Wait. Hold up.
Enemy
Oh, that's
UAV
just one.
overhead.
It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Someone's coming. Two of them. Ah, what?
Enemy UAV overhead.
Oh,
Enemy UAV.
I'm on the last. I'm the last one. I'm the last one. Finding it hard to do anything. See, so bad. I'm so bad.
Tomorrow will be different.
Yeah, I know. tomorrow will be different. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm. She's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. And she's almost gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Wonder this time where she's gone. Wonder if she's gone to stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. And this house just ain't no home. Anytime she goes away. I know, I know, I know. Ramasa. Deo, Missy Deo.
Get your teeth out.
Here I come and they wanna go home. Does she walk on down? Alright, here I come and they wanna go home. Oh, sorry. Oh, what the heck? Same guy. No! What the heck? Oh, sorry. Ah, I already heard him. I was just too slow. Just too slow to react.
Friendly precision. Entry gun down. Friendly advanced UAV active. Care package one.
Oh! Wonder this time when she Oh man. This guy's just running around. It's not one when no sunshine when she's gone.
UAV online.
I'm killing myself now. I didn't mean it. I was just so hyper. Too slow. That was so slow. Ouch. Nope.
Fair fight. A win is a win.
Too bad. Too bad. Too bad. No. that was already. Revenge.
Enemy Wilson deployed.
How did he know I was there? How did he know? It's not time to make a change. Just relax, take it easy. You're still young. There's so much you have to go through. Find a girl, settle down. If you want, you can marry. Look at me, I am.
Reloading.
What? Oh, okay. Probably saw my gun. There's so much you have to go. Find a girl, settle down. If you want, you can marry. Look at me, I'm old, but I'm happy.
Friendly unit.
Ooh. What?
Enemy down.
I have to go. Still young, I am old, but I'm happy. Turn off the mic. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Open mic. Oh, I'm on the open mic. I know. I had to go. Hello. Hello. One shot, one kill. Oh wow! Seriously, what? What the heck?
Enemy UAV overhead.
That's fine. Sitting there across the moon. She don't got about to see, but there's something about her.
Enemy cruise missile incoming.
You don't lie at the shit. This guy seems to be cheating. Weird.
UAV overhead. Enemy care package inbound.
Didn't heard it. Well, yeah, I heard it, but didn't know heck?
Enemy UAV overhead. Enemy precision airstrike. Take cover.
What? Warwick. Meep mop, meep mop. Oh, okay, Google. That's fine. Was I in the open? Oh, crappy. Oh, it's going to. Oh, crap.
The day's done. You're not. On your feet, soldier.
Let's get retarded and hot. Let's get retarded in here. Let's get retarded. Retarded. I swear. Give it to me. Reflection. In the strangers, there is no going back now. You're waking up the demons in me. Come on, get down with the sickness. Come on, get down with the sickness. Never give up, come on, get down. Just give it to me. Overjoy, over time, I'm thinking of you. Just for two, never be. You are me. Everything
Got enemy inbound. Lock and load.
I just gotta
Reloading.
We're losing control.
I just can't stop loving you. Oh crap. Very first time, you tell me just what will I do?
Gotta reload.
I just can't stop loving you. What? Oh crap! He was still there. Yesterday, there was a guy up there. Yeah, he's still there. It is so late. I just can't stop bugging you. Come on. Oh. Too long. Been standing in there too long. Do you see her?
Enemy personal radar in the air.
Sitting there across the moon. She don't got about to say something about her. But you don't know why, but you're dying. Wanna kiss the girl.
Friendly UAV overhead.
Kiss the girl.
Reloading.
Yes, you want her. It's possible she wants you too.
Allied cruise missile away. Friendly UAV overhead.
Go on, Mr. Girl. Oh, fudge.
Friendly UAV overhead.
love
Enemies
her.
halfway there. Step it up.
They're camping so hard. No way she moves. I can't figure it out. They're camping so hard, girl. Moves like a boss, thump like a boss. Disney.
Allied cruise missile away.
Like they're defending the fortress. Moves like a buzz, do like a buzz.
Enemy VTOL in the AO.
Of course they get it. Do like a buzz.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Do like a boss, like a boss. Stereo guy. What?
Friendly UAV overhead.
You saw me. You saw me there. Okay.
Less than a minute. Mission time critical. Get it done.
That's what you get for camping. Where's that? BT Puhap. BT Puhap. How am I getting here? Ooh. Someone's there. Holy moly.
We're RTB. Move out.
Baby, nobody gets through much heaven no more. And my child to come in, I'm waiting in line. Nobody gets through much love anymore. And as high as the mountain, I'm waiting in line. And I can feel the feeling sorrow. I can taste the love will never die. Love is such a beautiful thing. Ooh. A summer day and fade away. Nobody gets love anymore.
Overhead.
No, dude, you were in my way.
Enemy personal radar in the air.
Quick eggs!
Copy that. Nomad 2-3 ready for drop.
Too bad. What the heck? Revenge of the Fallen! Oh! I have to remember.
Friendly care package. Enemy halfway there. Strap it up.
crap. Gonna be told now. What the heck are you doing?
Clean yourselves up.
For a minute, girl, I want to know your name. Can be girl, I want to know your name. Critical. What's this? Aim up, reflect sight. So we're gonna. What's that? Aim up. We don't have that yet. Aim up. What? Aim up. Ah, okay. This one. And I don't like that. Alright, let's check this one. Girl, I want to know your name. Hmm? Oh, okay. I need to put something here. We needed this one. Damn. So little NVG enhance. We don't have that yet. What the heck? How can we unlock it? Night vision goggles. That's so funny. We don't have that yet. How can we unlock it? I still have a few more minutes.
Allied UAV overhead. Care package ready. Friendly care package inbound.
Having a pistol than an AR. Sometimes you don't hear footsteps. What? He's still there. I'm gonna snipe that dude. Ah, he's dead already.
Reloading.
Enemy UAV overhead.
coming back. Of course he is.
10 seconds.
No footsteps. No, he's already dead.
Copy that. Dagger 2-5. Ready to drop.
Another missile.
Fighters 1. Earn your victory. This is who we are.
What? Camping? Why is he saying we're camping when the whole team was roaming around? Muscle. Right. And what? That was weird. People saving the songs here. Lullabies. And there's so much more. No one's ever heard before. Ah, here. Something's telling me it might be you. Oh, this is nice. Woo. Don't black my way.
Capture and defend each HQ as it comes online.
Ah, crap. I kinda don't like this one for rush.
Enemy UAV up.
Rushing around
Taking the HQ.
Christmas tree for the Christmas party house. At least we got it already.
HQ contested. Enemy trying to shut down our HQ.
Driving around the Christmas tree, the Christmas party house. I don't think this is gonna work.
Enemy UAV overhead.
scope's gonna work. No.
HQ contested. Enemy. HQ contested.
Running around the Christmas tree.
Enemy UAV overhead. Shut down. Regroup. Okay, get ready.
It's hard to see. Come on, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. Come on, come up, come up. What? Oh, what? What the heck?
HQ contested.
It's spaghetti.
HQ contested. Enemy
Oh man, seriously.
HQ contested. Get over there.
No, that's not work. It's not working.
HQ.
Thought it's already clear.
HQ contested.
There's still 3 more.
Keep your eyes open.
Where was that coming from?
HQ captured. Done here, ready up. View established. Inbound.
Ah. This scope is annoying.
Enemy UAV. HQ is free. Get a move. Take it. HQ.
again.
UAV overhead.
Oh crap. Revenge of the fallen. Hey, whoa!
HQ contested. HQ contested. Disabling the HQ.
Oh. There, and that's the time to camp there. Not working well. What the?
Securing the HQ.
Where's he going? Okay. Why is the red ready? It's not having Customize. What do we have unlocked so far? Headshots, okay. That comes naturally. Crouching, yeah. Hip fire, okay. Long shot, yeah. Mounted, okay. What's this? Kill enemies with headshots, okay. Just one more. Crouching, okay. Get kills while your gun is using all attachment slots, okay. Get double kills, okay. Mounted. Double kills. Are we still gonna... we still have one more round. Hope it's not gonna be that long. go.
Kill confirmed. For emergency airdrop. Kill confirmed.
Oh crap.
We're halfway there. Keep fighting.
Oh, what?
Friendly care package is found. Kill confirmed. Care package arriving on station. Friendly UAV overhead.
Roger that. Nomad 2-1 on route.
Cruise missile, go for launch.
Bye bye.
Enemy precision. Take cover. Friendly UAV.
You can die.
Aircon taking fire over here!
Kill confirmed. Package arriving on station. Kill confirmed. Less than a minute. Keep fighting. We're almost.
Ready for airdrop. Bring it in.
Copy that. Nomad 2-3 ready for drop.
RTB. Kill confirmed.
Yeah. Alright, see you again later.